Hello and welcome to ANC Decides, the show that gives you up-to-the-minute reports, commentary and analysis building up to the ANC's December elective conference. I'm your host, Mpumalanga. Let's take a look at your top stories. Mathews Phosa challenges Mpumalanga provincial general council outcomes. Phosa wants PGC results to be nullified. The North Gauteng High Court to hear the case next Tuesday. ANC says it will ensure that slates are discouraged at the elective conference. Delegates will vote on the expansion of the top 6 and NEC strength proposals. And it's all systems go for Free State's elective conference scheduled for the 10th and 11th of December. The province confirms that all 29 outstanding branches have been reconvened for the conference. ANC presidential hopeful Mathews Phosa has challenged Mpumalanga's PGC outcomes. Phosa filed papers in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to have the results of Friday's Mpumalanga Provincial General Council set aside. Phosa's team wants the unity vote to be declared illegal. This comes after branches in Mpumalanga announced their preferred leadership candidates during the PGC at Mbombela Stadium, where unity led nominations with 223, followed by Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma at 123 and Cyril Ramaphosa with 117. The basis for court challenge is 35 branches that lodged dispute with the PEC and NEC did not get feedback before the Provincial General Council. Mabuza and the PEC misled branches into nominating unity against ANC guidelines that require a name and surname. The ANC Electoral Commission initially listed unity nominations as abstentions until Mabuza convinced them otherwise.
You must look at the court papers, you see what the press are saying. First of all, we want to debunk the unity vote up front and declare null and void and illegal. And of course, we've got other players that deal with issues of PGMs, 75 or 70 of them, which would raise issues which were never entertained and ignored. It means we're excluding these branches from participating in the conference. 3, there's branches which have nominated people from the kitchen. And we know that those branches never had PGMs. We're dealing with that. 4, there are branches, and that video from Grai shows it, which have delegates, legitimately, but they're being swapped now, because those delegates don't support certain people. So they're replacing them with other people who they think are happy to them. So that we've been challenging in the court papers. We know which branches. There's a bit of a weight from the players on we're attacking the frontally PGC decisions as being illegal in the circumstances. But people who were there were ghost delegates, some of them. But that's for the court to decide, not for me. Okay. And of course, there could be implications as we move towards the national conference.
Tuesday is the date day. We are done and we are ready. The court is at 10 o'clock at Johannesburg High Court. The respondent, it's DD Mabuza, Gwere Mandashe is from the NEC and some others.
ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe went on Twitter to discourage the involvement of the courts in the internal processes of the ANC. Mantashe said if you take ANC to court, not the way we say people shouldn't, you must know that you will shift power from members of the ANC to the courts.
In actual fact, there are 35 who signed the petition, and there are 15 who are also accompanying us. And in reality, because we are receiving letters from everyone, we might be 102.
There are processes in the organization for a recourse if somebody is robbed. Like in KZN, comrades felt that the votes that were counted as coming from the branches were not a correct reflection. And they challenged election agency, and that was corrected. If Comrade Matthew feels aggrieved, probably before he goes to court, to me, court is a last resort. You need to exhaust the internal processes.
Now, today in studio, we're joined by political analyst Professor Sipho Siebe and socio-political analyst Oliver Dixon. And via the phone, we're joined by Mpumalanga ANC Youth League Secretary Pulusho Mbatsani. Panel, welcome to all of you. Now, perhaps to start with you, Pulusho. Now, it's official that the presidential candidate Mathews Phosa is in fact going to challenge the legitimacy of that unity vote. What is the ANC Youth League's position on that?
Well, thank you very much to your good self and greetings to the listeners. Well, firstly, we want to put it on record that the African National Congress is infuriated by the conduct and behavior of the comrade Mathews Phosa. The comrade understands very well that in the African National Congress, there are processes to follow, there are avenues to exhaust whenever there are issues. Now, in this regard, Comrade Phosa understands very well, because he has been in the NEC for quite some time. He has been a Treasurer General, and he understands that whenever there are grievances of that nature, how should we bring them into the African National Congress? First and foremost, we must indicate that Comrade Mathews Phosa is a member of the African National Congress in what state? And equally, his branch have not even qualified for audit to go to the National Conference. And probably that is the reason why we're having this conversation today with Mathews Phosa running to the court and the media, reporting this matter to those platforms instead of reporting the issues to the correct platform, which is the African National Congress. If Comrade Mathews Phosa was a member of the African National Congress in good standing, who formed part of the BGM processes that took place in what state, if there was any BGM for that matter, Comrade Phosa would have been allowed a process or a right to go and assert his own grievance or dispute for that matter. And this tells us that Comrade Mathews Phosa is even, his branch is not even qualified to go to the conference. And that in itself tells you of the type of caliber and character of the leader we are dealing with. A person who cannot even mobilize his own branch, recruit 100 members and that particular branch to a branch annual general meeting, expects the whole country to have confidence in him. We're saying what comrades raised about the African National Congress is something that he should have vented in correct platforms in the African National Congress.
Now, beyond venting in the correct platforms, if we had to just talk you through the basis of the challenge, he talks about 35 branches who lodged their complaints with the ANC in the province but never received feedback. What is your position on that? Did they receive the feedback?
Hello?
Yes. In terms of the basis for that application that he filed in court, he goes on to outline the basis. Firstly, he talks about 35 branches that lodged complaints with the ANC in Mpumalanga, and he claims that they did not receive feedback pertaining to those complaints. Did they receive it?
Well, it's not true, because there was a process run by a certain team that was delegated by the National Executive Committee, which is the highest making decision body in between conferences. That team was sent down to the province. It convened the entire team in the province and all affected branches who had submitted grievances and disputes with regards to the matter. And all disputes for that matter were exhausted by the team that was delegated by the National Executive Committee. So the suggestion or assertion that there are 35 branches who have not been attended to and as such have not been responded to is actually not true. It's disingenuous and it borders on the whole ticket of sheer populism. I don't know why the fellow is doing what he's doing, because he understands very well that there were processes in branches. There were branch general meetings, and equally there is a process of dispute that is allowed. There is a period of dispute that is allowed in the Congress movement where a certain committee will go and attend to those things. And we feel that if there are branches that have not been attended to, Comrade Mathews Phosa is not the right person to speak for branches. Branches have got leadership, there are branch chairpersons and secretaries who are responsible for those issues. If they felt that there was something wrong, we strongly believe that those comrades those branches in particular would have raised these matters with the correct structures, and in this regard being the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC or the REC and later the National Executive Committee of the ANC, if those issues were not exhausted in a manner that is correct. So this fellow is probably on something that we do not know. We've heard that the fellow is suffering from schizophrenia.
Nana Pulusha, would you appreciate, though, that this could have serious implications on the elective conference itself, the one that's supposed to take place nationally? Do you foresee that with this new court action?
No, not at all. Not at all. Remember, we're talking about that PGC. Let's probably correct one thing, that that PGC was convened for the sole intention of consolidating branch nominations. Remember, that PGC was not intended for members or delegates to go and vote. It was a PGC that was intended for consolidations of nominations in branches. The voting was done in branches. What we had to do as that PGC, and we are happy that there was an independent institution, which is election, that was there to preside over the process and the process in a manner that it should be ran.
Noted, Pulusha. We just have to rope in our other guest in studio. Professor, your take on this whole matter. It's official now. He has filed that application in the Johannesburg High Court, and beyond this, some are now saying it would have implications on the elective conference. This is the 12th that's happening on Tuesday. It must be heard. And then on the 16th, the elective conference should commence.
Well, in terms of court action, the timing of the elective conference is irrelevant. What is important for the ANC and the courts is to determine whether the internal processes of appeal have all been exhausted. And this is one of the cases that maybe the ANC will put before the court, that these disputes must first be ventilated within the organization, and the court will always like to hear that part, that we are at a last resort, not the first resort. So that's number one. And two, the court might actually argue that the people, because one of the arguments that is being made, it's almost like people were misled. But if those people were sober and make a decision, the court will not want to entertain something that where people deliberately decided to do a certain thing. And this is an argument that Gwede Mantashe made, that people made the choice to say, so in ordinary elections, that will be a spoiled paper. It will end up there. The court will not entertain when people willfully choose to do it. They may have been trying to send a message, but where Mathews Phosa might have a case is if he can prove that there were irregularities. The courts have shown appetite to deal with those issues where people's conduct is inconsistent with the constitution of their own organization. We've seen it happen in the Free State, we've seen it happen to other places.
Yes.
And so if Mathews can prove that, but I don't think you can coerce adults to put a name if they don't want to put a name.
But we had heard of such reports, though. Nevertheless, in as much as some of them did come forward to say that we're meant to sign unity, while others said, no, we actually went on to sign this unity. Nevertheless, this was now the argument. Is this an abstention? Is this a unity vote? The Secretary General of the ANC went on to say there is no unity on the ballot box, so you have to write a candidate's name.
No.
So these people, could Mathews Phosa not perhaps fight to say this grouping, the 223 nominations here or abstentions, could then be kept outside of the conference? Is that a possibility?
No. We must understand the nature of the process. The PGCs are there to consolidate the nominations from various branches. But the delegates are still going to go, irrespective of what they chose. And even when they get there, they might change their position. So I don't think they will be disqualified. What will be as delegates? Because remember, you are entitled based on the number of people in a branch. So what you guys do with what you call a vote, it's your job. And I think the court will be interested in whether people were coerced or whether they did it willingly. And as far as Gwede is concerned, or the sum of people in the ANC, is that these are simply either you call them abstentions or spoiled papers. But the people did it deliberately, if you look at the numbers. So I think that part would be a difficult one for Phosa to sell. But what he can sell is when he can prove that some of the nominations were made in the kitchen, not where they're supposed to be made, which is also one of the things that he raises. But for people to choose, imagine the court will have to think that, suppose we say, you must go back, and the people do exactly the same thing again. What will the court do? The court must also learn to treat people as adults, that they make a choice.
Let's play devil's advocate here, Oliver. If indeed the court were to rule that they rerun, those 223 branches go ahead and rerun, what would be the implications now on the elective conference again?
Yeah, there are cost implications, and I'm unconvinced at this stage that the court would be willing to make such a proclamation. I think the court's first reaction is not going to be punitive, but rather corrective. That's to say, the court's going to ask the substantive question, do these 223 unity votes unfairly advantage a particular candidate? If the answer is no, which it is the case, then the court's going to say, this is not our business, right? That's to say, the court's going to say these are purely spoiled ballots or abstention. It's also not abstention because they actually did submit it, right? It was counted in the ballot box, so it counts as a spoiled ballot. And that's entirely fine. You're allowed to spoil your ballot. It's a democratic right of yours to do so if you wish to do so. So I think at worst case scenario, the court is going to say, as far as the corrective measure is concerned, those 222 votes, 23 votes should not be considered at all. That's to say, you're now going to take your all the votes that were submitted, subtract 223 of them, and look at what's left of that. Mathematically, everything remains the same. I don't think a particular candidate was unfairly disadvantaged or a candidate was particularly advantaged in this instance. It's quite disheartening that this call came from Mathews Phosa. One, he's an incredibly disciplined cadre of the movement. One, he's been in the ANC for a long period of time, and he understands the culture and the nature of the movement. He understands that the ANC at this particular critical juncture wants to establish unity. For him to make this call is quite disheartening, and it's not the behavior and considerations of someone who is a matured member of the movement.
No, I actually wish I could go on to stress that he actually went on to stress that what he's saying is that the branches that constituted correctly, he would love for them to go on to the conference, but it's the tainted ones which he wants to challenge. He went on to stress that fact, but we'll come back to this conversation. Now, ANC is gearing up for the elective conference, and the party has firmed up its proposal for the organizational renewal. Briefing the media, ANC NEC member Fikile Mbalula stressed that the party will take steps to curb slate politics. The party will subject its top leadership through the eye of the needle. The delegates will vote on the proposals of the expansion of the top six and NEC strength.
Rigmaroles, rebel arousers, and who go disrupt meetings and all of that, that thing should not be allowed in our organization. Because it does not mean that after that conference we will not be comrades, we'll still be comrades. Some of the people we critical about today, they will probably emerge as our leaders in the conference, and at that moment we must bow and basically say that we respect the decision of the structures of the organization. Everybody who's elected, whether you perceive as late or not, all of them are bona fides members of the ANC. And they followed the strictest criteria of through the eye of the needle. And that states, even in terms of the Constitution, to qualify to stand for the top six and the top, National Executive Committee, how many years you should have spent in the ANC. And all of them, they passed with flying colors because the Electoral College that oversee that process have actually given a green light.
Now, Professor, those proposals for organizational renewal, the first one being the expansion of the top six, your take?
Well, I don't think it's a major problem. The ANC is a big organization, and it may require muscle in the center to be able to deal with a number of problems. So I don't think it's a big issue. And if you look at the proposal, it is not so much a large number. They're talking about adding 1 or 2 people. But if you were to make it unwieldy, then there is a problem. But I don't think the position is to have as many people. They want to have simply 2 additional people at most, the deputy president and another deputy secretary general. So that is not an issue. The issue that Fikile Mbalula raises about the notion of the eye of the needle,
yes,
I don't think it's really it's desirable, but people are voted on the basis of popularity. if you were to talk about
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. You will have a template and where people will tick that this person qualified, this and all that. But you find people in the NEC of the ANC where you say, but this guy with all these problems that they have, why are they in it? And that is there is no adherence at all.
But
maybe
is this not intent, or at least if they're saying they're going to renew the organization, this is what they want to address, to say that at this point we cannot be voting on popularity because we could have a problem in government?
No, yes, I think we agree with that. But unfortunately right now, it's a bit too late. When you want to build an organization, you don't do it within three months or 2 months. You take steps and then you try to root out that problem. But it's good that it's on the table so that it begins to influence the members who are going to be elected or select who the leaders are.
Now, Oliver, on the resizing of the NEC, I know Balegambete is one that I read an article where she said that if she were to become president, she would reduce the number of NEC members. And many were saying, but you're part of the administration now, you're part of the leadership. Why couldn't you have suggested this while being part of this leadership?
Immaterial question. The substantive question is what's her reasoning for wanting to do that? I don't think the ANC should even consider that at the moment, given just how many sects of the ANC are excluded from leadership. So if I were, for instance, part of the ANC NEC and I were to make this recommendation, I hope they're watching to actually listen to some of these ideas. The first thing I would do is expand the NEC, maybe add 1 or 2, perhaps 3 members. It's always good to have an odd number of members when voting happens and stalemates come about. So the second thing I would do is demarcate certain number of those things to certain sects of the ANC. That's to say, 2 members of the ANC, of the NEC, compulsory have to be young people who are part of what we consider young people of South Africa, and maybe an additional 2 have to be while compulsory 2 women, for instance, in leadership. But I also put a limitation on how long a person can remain in the ANC. It makes no sense to me why Jesse Duarte is still part of the, do you understand what I'm saying? There must be a limit to the number of terms you can spend. That's to say, to renew the ideas and the energy that comes into the NEC.
No, interesting point there. Now, on to the looming threat of court action, which will emerge victorious in the ANC Free State, as it has been confirmed that all BGMs have been rerun and the provincial conference will sit this weekend. Kenny Mapanga filed this report for us.
The ANC in the Free State has confirmed that all BGMs are ready for the PEC to be convened this weekend. Provincial spokesperson Thabo Meko expressed disappointment at those who've run to the media and the courts to discuss the internal issues of the ANC. Speculations that factions in the Free State would attempt to delay the sitting of this conference have been rubbished by Machabeng Mayor Nkosinjani Spielman, who says that the ANC in the Free State is united and Thabo Manyoni as well as Ace Magashule are on good terms.
We are ready for conference on the weekend. Let me tell you one thing. The Free State is a very united province. People outside, they want to bring their own issues to make us being or to appear as if we are divided. Ace and Manyoni, they're friends. Leave these people myths getting out that Ace is not good. My Manyoni, no, it's just the myth. People, those people, they are friends. You cannot divide Ace and Manyoni. Actually, even the professor said that, look, people, no one can divide me and Manyoni.
The ANC Youth League in the province says that no previous or potential court action will stop the PEC from sitting this weekend.
So what we know for a fact is that there is no way that we are going to have our provincial conference nullified, because as indicated earlier on, the African National Congress has its own internal mechanisms in terms of arranging its own BGMs and conferences. And as earlier indicated, that we are complying with the decision of the High Court in the Free State, and we are operating within the legal framework. And that is why we are not worried with anybody else who would be going to court.
9 days are left till the National Elective Conference, and the BGMs are finally resolved in time for the Free State's Provincial Conference that will be held on the 10th and the 11th of December in Parys, where Ace Magashule is expected to be elected chairperson again. Kenny Mapanga, ANN7, Bloemfontein.
We now cross over to our reporter Kenny Mapanga out in the Free State. Kenny, a warm welcome to you. We know that the 29 BGMs have in fact reconstituted, but the biggest question now is the relations. Some are saying there are strained relations between Thabo Manyoni and the current chair, Ace Makashula. We also read the statement from the ANC Youth League saying they deliberately excluded him from their preference of who should lead the Free State going forward. So what exactly is the relationship there?
Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and the viewers at home, coming to you live from the ANC Free State headquarters in Bloemfontein. Now, with respect to the BGMs, I can now confirm that all the BGMs have been resolved, and my understanding is that if 70% of them have been rerun, they can now go forward with their provincial conference this weekend that will be held in Paris on the 11th of December and the 10th, where we expect Ace Makashula to be elected as chairperson again. The chances of Thabo Manyoni being elected as chairperson are a little slim to none at this point. Now, we were suspect about the Lizwele-Putsa region, where there were a couple of disgruntled members there who have expressed some disappointment in the way that the processes have been handled. But I do have ANC Youth League spokesperson for the province here with me, Silo Peterson, who can elaborate further on the relationship between Manyoni and Makashule at this point before they head to the conference. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. What are the chances of Thabo Manyoni? We know that he's contesting. What are the chances of him becoming chairperson?
Well, thank you very much for having us and in your show. Well, look, the reality of the matter is that Comrade Ace Makashule has overwhelming majority in terms of support. The branches have already communicated their preference at this particular point. It is not a new issue. As the Youth League, we have said it even during our provincial conferences back during April, to say that Comrade Ace Makashule and his collective will emerge in the forthcoming provincial conference. If there's any hope for Comrade Manyoni really to emerge, it would be through the courts, because certainly where the members who are disgruntled who seem to support his candidacy, but you can't find them anywhere in the branches, and they seem to think that the only thing they could salvage would be in the courts. So there's none. He's not even going to make it to the ballot.
Now, Mr. Peterson, we don't have a lot of time, but if Ace Makashule were to be elected at the national conference as SG, who would then be the preferred candidate to be chairperson of the ANC in the Free State?
Look, remember that Comrade Ace Makashule will be elected together with his collective on the 11th of December, and the deputy chair will be Comrade Paseka Nompondo, who is the current regional secretary of the ANC in Muteo. And the constitution of the ANC is very clear, that once the chairperson is not there, the deputy will act. So Comrade Nompondo will definitely be acting until the PGC, when the branches will nominate and decide otherwise.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Peterson. We don't have much time. That's all we have for you right now, Mfundo. We'll head back to you when we head down to Paris in the Free State for the provincial conference that members are confident will be sitting this weekend, and Ace Makashule will be elected as chairperson again. Over to you in studio.
No, thank you very much, Kenny. We await your feedback on everything that takes place at the elective conference this coming weekend. And that's where we leave it. Until next time.